Hey, what's up, guys? Got another new video here for you. This is Tuned In Sports. Breakdown division number 6. My name is Bryson.
I'm Steve.
And like I said, we got number 6 of the division breakdown, the final one. If you guys want to check out our thoughts on the other divisions, make sure you go back in the series and check out all the other ones. But we're finishing off here in the Northwest Division in the Western Conference, obviously. And, you know, obviously this is a division that's kind of near and dear to my heart because my team's in it. So, didn't exactly, you know, that wasn't entirely the reason why this one's going last. Just worked out that way. I didn't, you know, purposely do this one last because I wanted to save my team for last or anything. And that will become evident when we do the order in which we talk about these teams. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop right into it. Speaking of which, we're going to start with the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, Jazz are a pretty interesting team. You know, they perennially are usually pretty game. Always competitive. Seems like they always have some good stuff on the floor. Mm-hmm. They got an interesting roster. I think that Bojan Bogdanovic is a great player. Mm-hmm. Definitely one of the better players in the league. Mike Conley was a beautiful addition to that team, and I was kind of hoping he would have went to the Clippers, but ended up not. So, but with that being said, I mean, we're here to talk about the Jazz right now. So, but yeah, they've got a lot of nice pieces in place. Rudy Gobert is a great center. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of this stuff with most of these teams, especially when talking about teams like the Jazz that got a lot of talent on them, a lot of it gets down to injuries, you know, things of that nature. I think the Jazz definitely could be in the mix to get a playoff spot for sure. Mm-hmm. The Western Conference is going to be very difficult. You're going to have a lot of nice teams not make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, in particular in this division, you got quite a few nice talented teams in this division. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got some that are in rebuilding mode, but overall, you got a lot of nice, you know,
quality.
Yeah, you got a lot of quality players in this division. Mm-hmm. But I think the Jazz will do okay. They'll be right on either in the playoffs or just miss the playoffs, in my opinion. I mean, I think they're that kind of talent. I like some of the moves they made in the offseason. So I just think, you know, we'll see how it works out. But you know, like I said, every year they're pretty solid. So
yeah, no, the Jazz, they're you know, the funny thing is like in NFL, there's and I think part of this is that, well, for the most part, I really wasn't sure who was in the division with the Thunder because, you know, they play pretty much everybody. I mean, there's so many games on every night, and it's like, well, who am I to tell that we're playing somebody in the division or we're just playing somebody again? But if there was a team that I was not a huge fan of, there would probably be a couple in this division. And that was before I realized that they're in the division with the Thunder. But now that I realize that, it kind of affirms my belief that I'm not a huge fan of them. And the Jazz would be one of those, just simply because it seems like over the last handful of years, we've played the Jazz and lost to them in the playoffs and stuff, and it's just like, they're just a frustrating team because they're just solid, usually, and it's just like, come on, I'm tired of this damn team. But, you know, I mean, I don't want to sound like a sore loser or anything. I mean, credit to them. They've got some great players, and I feel like they're a really well-ran organization overall. It seems like they've had some players in the past, even dating all the way back, you know, to when the league was first coming around and they first had a team. You know, they've always been a team that is pretty solid. Maybe not world beaters, but just solid. And this team is no exception. You know, they got, obviously, like he said, Gobert, Donovan Mitchell. I mean, that guy, that series that they had against Denver was probably some of the most exciting basketball you'll ever watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
sure.
seriously. I mean, just Mitchell against facing against Jamal Murray, and just that whole series where they're both scoring 40 plus points, just going back and forth, game after game. I mean, I don't think it gets. I literally don't think it gets much better than that. That was just incredible, and that's a testament to both the teams, and just how well coached, how well ran they are. And I believe Utah is one of those teams that fits all those categories. And then, you know, again, they've got some nice players here. And then they also re-signed Derek Favors. Mm-hmm. He's back in the Jazz again. As well as they have Jordan Clarkson on their team, which I feel like he's a solid player and will be a solid fit for this team. And like he said, too, with Mike Conley, I mean, that was a great fit. Mm-hmm. Especially since in replacing Rubio, I don't think you could have asked for much better. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I feel like this is a team that is going to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I feel like there's a laundry list of teams probably that will be fighting for those spots. Yep. And I fully expect them to be in it. Mm-hmm. Completely, and they're just, I mean, they're a perennial 6 pretty much every year. It seems like they're 5, 6, 7, or 8. Yeah. And for years now, it doesn't seem to matter who's on the team, who isn't. But now I feel like they've got stars, though. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. Yeah. Before, they were a well-coached group of people with talent, but they didn't exactly have stars. Now they have stars. And on top of having stars, they are a place that people would be interested in going to and playing for because of it. Mm-hmm. They've kind of put them on the map. Mm-hmm. And then they've brought in some pieces to work around it. I mean, this is just a really good, well-ran organization, really good team. And I mean, again, I don't see them being an easy out for anybody. Nope. That has to play them because they're just good. And once again, you know, I said this in pretty much every video, but I'll bring it up again here. Barring injury, I mean, we can't foresee what's going to happen with injuries. You know, people can go out like that and not much you can do. But just looking at the roster and how it is now, and this is also, again, like I've said in past videos, pre-trade deadline or pre-other acquisitions. They could easily make some moves and be even better, which, in my opinion, they're going to need to do if they want to take the next step to, hey, this team's winning the finals this year. Yeah. I don't think they're there, but they are definitely a team that could surprise some people, and I could even see them winding up in Western Conference Finals. Mm-hmm. Do I see them having, beating the Lakers? No. And I mean, not that Lakers are just a shoo-in, although I think they kind of are. But I'm just saying, were it to be a situation where they matched up against the Lakers, I don't think they beat them. However, I think that goes for a lot of teams as well, for one. And for two, I think that they can compete with just about anybody. Mm-hmm. Getting the win, though, and competing and winning is two different things, though. I mean, I like I said, if they were to face the Lakers, I don't see them beating them. I see them putting up a fight and maybe making a series out of it, but I don't see them overcoming that obstacle. And but I mean, again, they're only a couple of pieces, maybe, from being, in my mind, the team to beat, because they have the big man in the center that's excellent, and Favors too. I mean, bringing him in especially he's got experience. He's been on this team before, and he's an older guy that can help model some of the younger players and stuff. On top of, you've got what's his nuts, Donovan Mitchell. He's just begun. I mean, this is like his second or third year, I think. So he's a young guy. Joe Ingles, I mean, another solid player on this team. I just feel like you got a lot of guys on here that that are solid, and a lot of them are young players. So a couple moves here or there could take this team from, yeah, you can count on them being in the playoffs, to, hey, look out. Like we say, not just making the playoffs, but making noise.
Yeah.
And I already think that they're one of those teams. I mean, again, last year they took, they should have, in some respects, made it to the Western Conference Finals, because was that maybe that actually that may have been, no, that was in the first round. But their series against Denver, they were up 3-1.
Yeah.
And it came down to the last shot, literally, in most of those games. So, I mean, they competed with the team that made it to the Western Conference Finals and took them to the limit and should have beaten them in some respects. So, they're already there. I mean, it's not like, oh man, they, just a couple more pieces. In some respects, you could argue that they're already there.
Yep.
But I do think that they do need a little bit more if they want to go to the finals. But I mean, if I'm a fan, I'm saying, you know what? I like where we're at. And I'm at least happy that every year this is a team that, I mean, at this point, it's like every single year this is a team to look out for. And say, hey, they're not, if you're in a series with the Jazz, you know that you got to play some good basketball or they could beat you.
Yep.
And like I said, as a fan, that's all you can ask for, really. That's all you can ask for. You can't, I mean, sure, would you like to win the NBA Finals every year? Yes, of course. But, that may not always be realistic, I guess you would say. So anyways, let's get into the next team. Speaking of the Nuggets, I guess that was a great way to transfer into the Nuggets. We'll talk about them next. Another team where I feel like they, for quite a few years now, have been a team that's solid and usually perennial playoff. But once they play the big teams, generally didn't give them much of a chance. But I feel like the tides are turning here with this team. And the biggest reason that I feel differently is, again, because I believe that they have their guys. And honestly, this team reminds me, and I think it's partly why their series against the Jazz was so good, is because those two teams I practically identically look at it in the same way. I mean, they've got their star guard in Jamal Murray, and they've got their star big man in Jokic. Now, I know that Jokic and Gobert play a different style of ball, but still. And that's been the difference between where they are now and where they have been in the past, is they've got, like, legit people now that I would consider to be top players in the league moving forward, as well as they have nice pieces. But they've always had, in my opinion, nice pieces. It's just they were missing that thing to take them up a level. But now I feel like they're starting to get it. And they've got Will Barton, who's, a solid shooter, I feel like. Michael Porter Jr., I mean, if that guy's trajectory keeps going the way that it is, based on what I saw of him last year, he could be really, really serious moving forward.
No, he was projected to be he should have been probably one of the top 1 or 2 picks in the draft the year he came out. It's just that he was injured.
Yeah.
So he slid down the post.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. And I mean, I truly believe that he's going to be one of the better players. I mean, he showed signs of it last year of being pretty serious. And he played, and it's not even too. And this is the other thing too with Murray as well as Donovan Mitchell and Jokic and some of these guys. It's not even just that they played good all season. It's that when playoffs came, they got even better. I mean, they didn't just like play good enough to get him there and then disappear. Those guys upped their game to the next level and were balling out. I mean, Jokic especially, that dude was, I mean, it was a noticeable difference when he was off the floor. And same with Murray. I mean, those guys went in there and carried the teams. And it's just, those guys elevated this team so much. And then they've got solid pieces too, like Paul Millsap. There's a guy with a lot of experience in this league, solid player, maybe not the player he once was anymore, but I don't think he needs to be either. You know, I don't think that they need him to have 20-point outings every night in order for this team to succeed, especially with the rising of, what's his name that we were just talking about, Porter Jr., you know, and then also Gary Harris, too. He's a young up-and-coming player that I feel like at times played very well last season as well. And so I feel like they got a lot of little players here and there that are solid, and this is a team that is really, really good. And, you know, before last year, I always kind of looked at Denver like, okay, well, yeah, they're good, but once they play a team that I would consider to be on the next level, they lose. And, you know, against the Lakers last year, they lost. But against the Clippers, who I considered to be a team that was next level, they won. Now, I realize the Clippers had their own stuff going on. You know, you can blame that on whatever. But all I'm saying is the way that I watched Jokic and the other guy, Murray, play in big moments, in big games, in all season long, and so forth, legitimizes this team to me and takes them to, okay, this is a real team here. It's not just another team that no matter where they get seated in the playoffs, seems like they're good until they play the teams and then they just lose. This is a team that now I look at and say, okay, don't want to face them. Well, let's try to dodge them. Because before that, you know, especially like as a Thunder fan, you know, if I was going into the playoffs, I'd say, okay, don't want to play the Warriors, would rather not play this team or that team, but if we happen to slide into 7 and end up getting a first-round matchup against Nuggets, yes, let's get it. Can't wait. But, you know, now it's like, no, let's not play the Nuggets. I'd rather have I'd rather have Portland or something like that. So great job by the Denver organization and stuff, and great job by the people that are drafting and stuff to bring in these players. And another thing is you got to think too. It's like some of these teams, you know, you look at it and you say, well, geez, they're picking in the 20s and they're finding these guys. Whereas you got these other teams, like we said, that are perennially lottery picks, and they can't seem to get it figured out. But then you got a team like Denver who's perennially picking in the 20s, if not higher, because they're always in the playoffs, and they're finding these hidden gems and stuff. So all the respect in the world to Denver and what they've been able to build, a lot of which has been through draft. And then last thing that I'll say too, because I mean, you look at Jokic, Murray, as well as Porter, all drafted. It's not like they traded for these guys. All drafted. And then on top of that too, last thing I'll say is I was a huge fan of them getting JaMychal Green. I think he's going to be a great, really good piece for them. And I'm not just saying that because he was on the Clippers and my brother likes him, but I really think, they're going to miss Jeremy Grant. And I think he's a perfect one to fill that role because he can knock down shots. I mean, I think he is an underrated player. From what I watched of him on the Clippers, all the time when I watched him, I was extremely impressed. I feel like he's one of those guys that, first of all, does a lot of the little things that don't show up on the stat sheet. And then on top of that, I feel like he's a guy that's kind of like a Serge Ibaka, where on a given night, he could maybe get hot and give you a solid scoring night without really it, being like one of those things where he's putting up 15, 30 shots. He can give you 20 points on, 10 shots. Easy. So I feel like he was a great pickup for them.
Yeah, he was.
Really good job. But that's all I got to say about Nuggets. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, there's not really much left to say. You pretty much summed it up. Jeremy Grant will be missed, however.
Yeah, for sure.
He was a very good player.
Another Thunder guy.
But JaMychal Green is a very nice replacement for him.
Yeah.
JaMychal Green brings it every night. There's not a night where he doesn't come in and give you his best effort.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I like that. This team's full of talent, which is nice for Denver fans because, for years it was always the Broncos that, pretty much were making the noise. The Avalanche have had some really nice teams, but the Nuggets were always kind of an afterthought, between them and the Rockies. It was always,
whatever.
We have teams that play, but are they really playing? No. So, but the Nuggets have really been one of those teams that has kind of, turned into something really nice and something that they can be proud of.
Yeah, they're probably outside of the Avalanche now. They're probably the best team in Denver.
Yeah.
I know the Avalanche are predicted to do pretty good things this year, but
yeah, it's just one of those things where they've been patient. They've built the roster how they kind of wanted to, and the players that they've brought in have been nice pieces to fit the puzzle that they want it to be.
Yep.
So, and they proved last year that they can play with anybody, and I fully expect to see them continue in doing that. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they win the division. I think they will.
Yeah.
And with that being said, that's about all I got to say.
Yeah. Only thing is, though, I think they're going to be really tough, and I think they are legit, but I think they might need a couple of pieces just because I feel like in terms of outside scoring, they could use some help in that category in order to really, for me to give them a better than just a chance against the Lakers, for instance. I feel like they don't have enough to get past the Lakers and maybe even the Clippers. I know they beat them last year, but I feel like
the Clippers beat themselves.
I'm just saying I feel like roster wise, I think the Clippers and the Lakers and even the Heat and some other teams have a better roster top to bottom. So I think a few pieces or a trade here and there could really elevate this team. And without those things, I see it kind of being like last season where I think they could maybe be a team that gets to the Western Conference Finals, but I don't see them getting to the finals again.
Right.
And so I hope, for any Denver fans' sake, I hope they make some moves because they're not far from being the best team in the West. They're very, very close. And it's not even like they need to trade for a star. That's the biggest thing,
They just need shooting.
Yeah, it's not even like, okay, well, if we could just get Giannis to come over, we'd be set. They don't need Giannis. They have great players. They just need depth.
Yep.
They need depth. And if they could get it, great. Or the other thing that they could do, which I think, based on what we're seeing, is try to accumulate draft picks because their draft picks work out great for them.
Yep.
And their best players right now have all been their draft picks. So maybe instead of trying to trade for stars and stuff, try to accumulate draft picks and keep building that way, and they might have better success. So
no, I agree.
But anyway, all right, let's get on to the next team, Minnesota Timberwolves. You know, this team, I don't know. It's kind of, I feel like it's kind of a mess, and I feel kind of bad. You know, they've got some players here for sure. I'm not sure what this team is going to look like, to be honest with you. I feel like they're another team where their roof could be, or their ceiling could be as high as making the playoffs and being not just like an 8 seed, but like being 4 or 5. I mean, I feel like they have players and stuff to really compete and play at a high level. However, for whatever reason, it seems like in years past when that's been the case, it just either hasn't meshed well, maybe it wasn't coached correctly, as well as, you know, like when they had the Jimmy Butler experiment, it just, you know, maybe bringing in the wrong people, too many head cases and stuff like that. And then, you know, they traded Wiggins, brought in Russell, who, you know, in my opinion, I think Wiggins is a really good player, and I think he's not too far from being maybe like an all-star. I think he could be that, but I feel like Russell is already kind of there. And so I feel like getting Russell on this team was excellent for them. And then bringing in Rubio again, I think Rubio is going to be a very valuable asset to this team now. I know when he was there before, it didn't really amount to much, but this team is going to very much benefit from him being on the roster. Mm-hmm. Plus the experiences and the playoff experience and stuff that he's had since he left is going to be a valuable asset to this roster. You know, they got some players. I like Anthony Edwards. Jarrett Culver is a nice young player. Hollis Jefferson, you know, he's all right. And then, of course, the obvious ones like, you know, Karl Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, we already talked about, Ricky Rubio again. But even with all that said, though, I see this being a team that is fighting for, probably at best, I'd give them a chance at the 8th seed. But I see them kind of fighting around 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th area towards the bottom.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily that they don't have talent. It's just, again, like I said in the last video, it's just everybody else is so tough. If they were in the East or something, they might have a little bit better chance. But they just don't have enough right now. And unfortunately for them, I feel like they could lose some pieces before they get new ones. Like, for instance, Karl Anthony Towns, I mean, he's a great player, but how long is he going to want to stick around in Minnesota where they perennially aren't even, you know, they're perennially one of the first teams eliminated from the playoffs in the West? Mm-hmm. How much longer is he going to want to stick around, and how many different combinations of players are they going to bring to Minnesota before he says, apparently we just aren't winning here, and then he leaves? You know, how much longer before that happens? Mm-hmm. And if that does happen, that's going to set them back by quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, hopefully they can reach their potential and be a team that is contending. I don't see it happening this year. I see them not making the playoffs, but I think they're making steps in the right direction. And I think having Russell there is going to be a huge piece. And I think getting him and trading Wiggins was the right move for them. I think Russell could really be the face of this franchise and could give them a legitimate shot to actually do something. Whereas Wiggins, I don't know if he's there yet, but Russell, I think, is close to, if not there already. So I look at this team as a team that could potentially do something, but I don't think they will.
Nah, I don't see him making the playoffs.
Yeah, me neither.
Anthony Edwards, number 1 pick in the draft. So
yeah, him too. I forgot about that.
If he plays up to low, not expectation level, but if he's able to
potential,
he could be a difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
The guy's a flat out scorer, hell of an athlete. So I just feel like it's a little early to know what this team's gonna really be. And with that being said, I mean I definitely don't see him making any headway in this division right now. There's too many good teams within this little division and within the Northwest.
Let alone in the whole West.
They'll be lucky not to finish last in this division.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, but again, I mean, if you're a fan, you got to be, encouraged by the fact that, okay, we had a number 1 pick in the draft. Hopefully this Anthony Edwards works out, and that gives you kind of some pieces to build around moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Karl Anthony Towns is one of the better centers in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, there's not many centers that play like he plays anymore.
No. True centers.
Right. Guys that actually play with their back to the basket and, play underneath the rim. Most of the guys now seem like everybody's out shooting threes and doing all this other stuff. But he's one of the actual true centers that's left in the game.
Which I think is why he has a lot of success. Because I think most people, they're trying to draft to be able to handle somebody that's out there shooting threes. And so when you got him who's taking you down low, people they don't have the size to deal with it.
No, and he's a big guy.
He's huge. Yeah, he is.
So, good luck guarding him. So, with that being said, he is a difference maker. And, this team, I see them, kind of like you said, 9, 10, 11 area, something like that. I don't really see them making the playoffs. That doesn't mean that they still can't have a positive season out of it. It's all a lot of it's going to depend on how well the rookie plays. And thankfully for him, he's got some guys that can kind of mentor him. D'Angelo Russell and Ricky Rubio are, 2 good players that he can kind of learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And that Josh Okogie is not a bad player either.
Yeah. Yeah, I was.
And so he, they have got some talent here. It's just, unfortunately, when you're in the West, there's just, everybody else is so good that you can be better and not really realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the same thing like I talked about before in another video. It's like, well, if everybody, or if you're down here and you're getting better, well, that's great. But if everybody that's up here already is also getting better, it might not show up too much in the standings. You could be getting a lot better and still be in the same spot. And it's like, boy, did we even do anything?
No.
But, yeah, you did. But it just, when the Lakers are reloading, the Warriors are going to be a threat this year, who was way down last year because of the injuries. But the Warriors are going to be in it, and then all these other teams. It's tough sledding. It really is. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, and the other thing is, too, with the T-Wolves is like, I don't feel like they're missing stars or anything, because Towns is one of the best at his position. Russell's one of the best at his position. Rubio is above average. He's above average. So I feel like they're not far. It's just, I don't know really what it's going to take to get him to the next level. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe depth. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Obviously, it's going to take more than what they got if we don't even have them making the playoffs. But I'm just saying, it's like I look at the roster and I don't think it's bad. No. But it just, everybody else is great and they're just good. So It is what it is. All right, let's get into the Thunder. Dad was saying the T-Wolves will probably be lucky to not finish last this year. I think they probably won't. Because I believe the next team we're going to talk about, which is my team, the Thunder, will probably end up being the team that finishes last this year. Unfortunately, that's probably going to be the case. Not going to say surprisingly, because literally pretty much every player of note from last season is no longer on the team. Obviously, the Thunder were one of, if not the most active teams over the offseason. Generally, when you hear that, you think, oh boy, here we go. We're going to be serious. But they were more so on the giving end than the receiving of a lot of the action that they were involved in. With that being said, we still got some players. We got a couple of guys returning, obviously. Luguentz Dort, I mean, that guy, if he could just become a better shooter, I legitimately look at him as he could be the next Paul George, except for bigger. And I'm not talking bigger as in like bigger star or better star. I'm just talking about he's huge. Like Paul George, I mean, I'm not saying Paul George is small, but you look at Lou Dort and he's built like a freaking truck. I mean, that guy is huge. But, I mean, he's got... The reason I liken him to Paul George is when Paul George first came in the league, that guy, he was a dude that locked you down on defense. And he was an incredible defensive talent. And then, not saying he couldn't shoot, but he wasn't really known for that. That wasn't what he was... When you saw 13, you weren't thinking, oh, we're going to get lit up for 40. It was... This guy's going to play great defense. And then the offense will come as a result. And then he became one of the best two-way players in the league as the years went on. I see that with Lou Dort. He could easily do that because defense, he has that down. I watched every game in the final or in the playoffs last year, and he gave Harden everything that you could ask for and more. He played excellent defense on Harden, and basically, I'm not going to say he locked him down, but he kept him in check. And he gave him probably one of the most difficult series from a one-on-one standpoint that he's had. He played excellent defense on Harden. Shea, another great player, young too. Really young player that we have on our team that is going to be probably the future point guard for us. And he had big minutes last year. Really good player. We got other guys too. Justin Jackson came over from another team. Al Horford.
George Hill.
Ariza. Yep, George Hill too. Horford, like I said, as well as multiple different guys. And then the other thing is we've got. I feel really bad because I'm probably going to butcher his name again, but Pokusevski. I'm just going to call him Alex. That's what I did in the last video. I'm going to call him Alex. That guy, I have heard nothing but praise and admiration and just great things from coaching staff, from players, from fans. They are super, super high on this guy. I'd never even heard of him. But boy, I mean, they're talking about this guy like he could be a really, really good player moving forward. And we just drafted him this year. But man, the reports on him and stuff have been nothing but the sky is the limit with this guy. So we'll see how he plays. But if he can play as good as they're talking about, he could be another big staple of this team moving forward. Mm-hmm. He could turn into one of the next stars for the Thunder, and I don't think it would be hard. I mean, already I think he could be like an Ibaka type player for him.
I think personally, I mean, there's a lot of pieces on this team right now that I think they were just brought there to kind of,
feel the team.
Put somebody, let's get some interesting pieces on here. However, I mean, if you look at the future for the Thunder, they've got nothing but a bright future ahead. I mean, they got nothing but a ton of draft picks coming from all these different teams, mm-hmm. and they've been perennially a team that has done well in the draft and drafted a lot of high priced talent. Mm-hmm. That's definitely turned into talent.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're sitting there wondering about the Thunder and what the direction is going to be, they're obviously going into young. I mean, they're trying to get younger. The addition of Horford and Hill are just kind of like, hey, come in here for this year and we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, I do believe, however, that they might be surprising. They might surprise you how good this team might be. Because, I mean, similar to last year. I mean, everybody was more or less, oh, fuck, this team's done. Yeah. Nobody's going to, think the Thunder can do anything. But I look at this roster, and they've got a lot of athleticism. And they've got some proven talent that can still play. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if the young guys, some of the young talent can step up and play well in their roles, I think this could be a team that could surprise you. Now, I'm not suggesting that, they're going to come in as a 6th seed or something like that, like they ended up 4th or 5th last year, which was shocking. I'm not suggesting they're going to repeat that. But to say that they're not going to be relevant, I don't know if that's true either. Because I think, with Shea, I think Shea is probably in that stage where he's going to really start to blossom. I think, he's had enough years put in there now. There's not a whole lot that he hasn't seen at this point. Uh-huh. And, if you're going off of straight talent, he's got it. He's uh-huh. got what you need. Like you said with Lou Dort, that's another guy that seems like his career is on the way up. His ceiling's a lot higher than what it sits at the moment.
Yeah.
Diallo, he's proven that he can play some big minutes.
Yeah, for sure. and Baisley, too.
I was going to say, Baisley is another guy you better not sleep on. Yeah. So, there's a lot of potential. This team is going to be interesting. I'll say that. I think they're going to be better than what people think they are. But as Bryson has said a million times already today, it's one of those things where you're getting better, but because of the talent in this division and in this conference, it's just
it might not show.
It's going to go unnoticed. Uh-huh. But I personally really like this team. I like, Trevor Ariza is a nice player, and at this point, he's just going to be a role player, coming in, bust a few threes for you, because he was always good at that, and he always just played good defense. Always.
Yeah, for sure.
So if he can give you that, and he can still shoot the ball. Yeah. So like I said, this could be a really interesting team and a lot of fun to watch.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I just think, going into this season, my expectations aren't too high. And like he said, it could be a situation like last season where everyone's counting them out. You got a lot of players. Another thing is I feel like you got a lot of players on this team that are going into this wanting to prove something. Like, mm-hmm. You look at Al Horford and, obviously his time in Philadelphia, he wasn't exactly, didn't play to the level that many expected. And also part of the reason why a lot of people felt like he wasn't worth the contract, and why a lot of people weren't interested in trying to trade for him because he's got a huge contract, and people didn't feel like he was playing to that level, especially for a guy that's only getting older. He's already in his 30s, I believe. But I feel like, looking at him, I feel like on this team, he could be a guy that's saying, hey, I'm still relevant and I still can play. And this could be an opportunity for him to go out there and show that, hey, I haven't passed my time of being an asset to somebody. Now whether or not he's going to be a piece for this team to win them something, I don't think so. But I'm just saying, I don't think he was brought here with the intention of being a building block. I think he was brought here with the intention of, hey, we're going to accumulate some draft picks in the process, or a person that we can move in the future. But I think I look at him a lot like Chris Paul last year as being somebody, everybody started to kind of count him out because of how he performed in the previous season. And they're like, okay, well, we don't really want him. And then he comes over here and he shows everybody exactly why he earned the contract in the first place and has one of those kind of seasons. I think he could easily do that. And like you said, there's a lot of young players, Deontay Burton, Diallo, like you said, Lou Dort, Ty Jerome, Shea, yeah, for sure. And then Poku, Alex, Poku, and Schofield, Roby. There's a lot of young players here that, some of them probably have higher ceilings than others. But if people play to their potential, you don't know. Who knows what could happen?
There's no greater motivator than to hear everybody tell you you're not going to be good.
Exactly.
That's the biggest motivator that they have is, everybody thinks we're going to be garbage. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll show you how much garbage we are as we go out and whoop you. So, and they, like I said, they've got, and like you said, they've got pieces here. It's not like this team is going to go out there and look like a bunch of guys never played ball before.
Yeah.
They've got pieces, and they've got people that have been very successful in this league in prominent positions. Al Horford, like him or don't, he's been in this league a long time, and he's been a great player. And George Hill's another guy probably that people constantly overlook him. He bounces from team to team, but yet everywhere he goes, he's on the floor.
Yeah.
Right? He's not some guy not seeing minutes.
Yeah, and not only that, but I can't overemphasize too the amount of help, especially with how young the team is overall. A guy like Al Horford, a guy like George Hill is going to be to these younger players, especially Al Horford, because, that guy has been around the league. He's seen it all. He's played in many different cities.
And he's an all-star.
He's been in all-star games. He's been on championship caliber teams. He knows. And same with George Hill. And, and same with Chris Paul last year. The amount of growth that Shea experienced from season 1 to season 2 on the Thunder, I credit probably a lot of that in the growth that you'll see from season 2 to season 3. A lot of that credit should go to Chris Paul because he probably raised the ceiling a little bit on his potential, as well as pushed the process of getting to it along farther. Just having Chris Paul on that team. And I think, again, some of these guys can also really help with that too. I think, but, with that being said, though, realistically, I don't see them making the playoffs. Could they? Could they surprise some people and, be kind of like the Clippers were a handful of years ago? This band of rebels that, gets in there and nobody gave them a chance. And Thunder last year, too, more recently. Nobody gave them a chance. They had like a 0.4 or something chance ESPN gave them at the beginning of the season. Found themselves into a 5th seed. So it's not even like they accidentally hopped in there. Right. They were better than teams. So I'm not saying that couldn't be the case again this year. However, I don't see it being very likely that is the case. But, as a fan of the team, I also am not going to be upset if that is the case. Because I understand the direction we're going. I have full faith in the ownership. And I'm more so just looking to see, okay, who's really good? What's the potential of some of these younger players? And who can we go ahead and probably move away from? That's what I'm looking to see. And then, of course, what's the new coach going to look like?
Right.
But I'm not sitting here saying, if we don't go back to the playoffs this year, I'm done. Fire everybody. I'm not going to be upset if we are what we probably will be, because that is what the direction that we're taking right now, but we're doing it on purpose. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. I mean, a lot of these teams, like Minnesota, for instance, I feel like in some respects, the seasons that they've had over the last handful of years, they haven't been that bad on purpose. It's not like they were trying to lose. They were trying to win and still losing. Whereas here, we're trying to rebuild and stuff. So I love where the Thunder are going, what the future is. This year could be rough, but I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with that. And I look for some big things out of some of these young players. And I look for Horford to have a bounce-back season as well. I think he's really going to play well on this team if we keep him. He might just be another piece that we move. Or it could be a situation, too, where bringing in Horford, I was a little skeptical of it at first, but it could be a situation a lot like Chris Paul. Would we have gotten nearly as much for Chris Paul that we did if he hadn't played that season for us? Not even close, probably. Mm-hmm. If it would have been, let's just put it this way, the Suns would not have given the Rockets that much for Chris Paul, based on how he played in his final season there. Mm-hmm. So it could be the same for Horford, where what would we be able to get for him now? Maybe not too much, but if he comes out and has a banging year, and people say, okay, we could use that on our team, we could end up getting a lot more for him than maybe we'd be able to right now, and that would only help us moving forward. Or at the very least, we have an experienced player who's been around the league a while and can help groom some young guys.
Yep.
So either way, I'm happy. So let's get into the final team here, Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah, Portland. Portland, in my eyes, is going to be one of the more improved teams. I mean, they were solid last year. I think a lot of the pieces are in place for them to make a run, dependent upon injuries and things like that. But
of course,
I think a lot of the pieces that they need to be in the mix are there. I can see this team being in the top 4 seeds in the West, which is saying something.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just feel like, when you got guys like Damian Lillard, C.J. McCollum, I mean, those guys can light it up for 50 on any given night. They're really solid in a lot of the areas. I love Nurkic.
Yeah, for sure.
For the center position. That guy is just awesome. Very solid player. They got some nice young pieces. I mean, Enes Kanter is another nice addition.
Another Thunder guy.
That can give you solid minutes at the center position. Mm-hmm. I really feel like, Rodney Hood is an undervalued, very good player. And I mean, I think he could be a big piece, moving forward for them. And
then they brought in Covington, too, over the offseason.
Oh, yeah. And, that goes without being said. Covington's a big-time player in this league. Mm-hmm. And he's going to make an impact there. That's why I say I feel like they've made the necessary adjustments. And then, Carmelo Anthony, in my opinion, probably, he signed with them for another year. And I really felt like last year he actually outplayed the contract that he was on. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this year he'll probably do the same. And the big difference with him is he doesn't mind coming off the bench now. Before he was always thinking like, I'm still an all-star in this league. And, that's how he got to be an all-star in that league, though.
Yeah.
Is because
he had the mindset of
right.
I'm as good as anybody out here.
Right, and and that's really what propelled him to be so great. You don't have that. You don't have a mindset where I'm not very good, and
get to those levels,
right, and get to that level. So I don't expect him not to have a positive look on himself.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he came in this year and said, "I'll accept coming off the bench," because he could be one hell of a six man.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, he's extending his career. Obviously he still loves to play, otherwise he wouldn't have taken it.
Yeah.
And he can be a real big piece of the puzzle for this team. And again, he's one of these guys that get to the playoffs. He's had plenty of playoff experience, and he'll step it up.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably up him into a starting lineup situation when we get to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. If he needed to.
Yeah, because he's not afraid of the big scene.
No.
He's been most of the years he's been in the league. He's been the best player on this team.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little different situation because you got Damian Lillard and McCollum are little younger guys and very good players in their own right. But this isn't a situation where Carmelo, I think he's just comfortable in his skin, which is a huge thing for them, because if you don't have that, the attitude of I feel like I should be starting, and that can be a detriment rather than.
Yeah, just ask the Thunder. That's exactly what the problem was when he was on the Thunder. Is he's like, shoot, what the? I don't feel like I should be the third option or anything. I'm the best player on this team.
Right.
And that's exactly why it didn't work.
Right.
Because he wasn't willing to accept, anything other than I'm the best option on this floor at any time, no matter where it's played. But now it's a different Carmelo, and that's why he's adding a ton of value to this team.
No, and I think he was signed for a mid-level exception or whatever it was. He's like veterans minimum or something. He's not making a ton.
No.
And so he's great value for what they're paying him.
Mm-hmm.
And not just out for the playing ability, but also just for the experience, and that he can sit there and take a younger guy and nurture him and show him how to play it and what to do.
Yeah. And not only that, but by bringing in like a Covington and guys like that kind of play the same position, you're not asking him to go out there and we need you in order to be able to compete. And when you're not on the floor, we start losing. You've got guys that can more than maintain and pull their own weight. And so when you put him in, you're able to get the best out of him because he doesn't feel like you're relying on him in order to do anything.
Right.
And when that's the case, good luck, because the less you see of him, the better those minutes, the more quality you probably will get out of him. When he's not out there, 38 minutes a game being asked to, carry the load, and he can just be like, hey, when we put you in, do what you do, you're going to get good stuff out of him.
Yep.
You're going to get shades of past Carmelo probably. Whereas on another team, whereas on the Knicks, for instance, that's not going to be the case. You're going to say, hey, if you don't ball out, we lose.
Yeah.
Whereas that's not the case on this team.
No. Because
you got enough around him. As far as this team goes, I completely agree with everything he said. I feel like this is a team that is good, has the potential to be very good, and has the potential to be a team that really can compete. And I think, barring injury, of course, but the thing I'll say about this team is I think they really need to. Because, don't get me wrong, Damian Lillard is exceptional. C.J. McCollum is a very, very good player and a perfect complement to Lillard, I believe. And they are very, very good. But what I will say is, I feel like they're starting to get to the point of wasting Lillard's talent. Because at this point, I believe he's probably getting close to, if not already at the point where he's played more years than he has left. And since he's been here, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Western Conference Finals is nothing, because I know they made it to the Western Conference Finals once or twice, I think, and they've been a perennial playoff team, but it hasn't amounted to the success that having somebody like Damian Lillard on your team should probably amount to. Because he's one of, if not, in my mind, I mean, I feel like the only reason that he's not considered, and, I'm not a big Trail Blazers fan, because here's another team that them and the Thunder have had quite a few years of, beating and bashing on each other, as well as Damian Lillard has gone on record and, had personal issues and beefs with multiple Thunder players at the time. So obviously I'm not a huge fan, but all I'm saying is I think it's only because he's on Portland and not on a team like the Lakers or the Celtics or the Bulls or something that he is not considered to be the best point guard in this league. Because as much as I may not be a huge fan of his, I think he is one of, if not the best point guard in this league. And like I said, the only reason that I don't think that a lot of people look at him maybe that way is because he's on a team like Portland as opposed to a large market team. But what I will say is, like I said, they don't have all the time in the world to just sit here and say, okay, well, we'll get it figured out one of these years. You've had one of these years multiple times now, and he's only getting older. And I mean, I'm not saying that he's reaching the point where he's not the same player. He's still got probably 4, 5, 6 years of, what he is right now, just outstanding play. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he's about to go over the peak. But what I am saying is you need to take advantage of that and put a team together that can do something, because he has put his all into this team for years now. And, I mean, at this point, I don't see him being one of those people that ever leaves the city of Portland. I don't see him being somebody that, leaves this team to go join the Lakers for a ring or something like that. I think he would have done it by now. So I don't think you're going to ever lose Lillard. I think he'll be somebody that starts with Portland and ends his career in Portland and never leaves. So with that being said, as much as I'm not a big fan of his, I respect the hell out of his playing ability, and I think he deserves a ring, and he deserves, with the amount of great play that he's given over the years and everything else, Portland owes him a lot, and they owe it to him to get to the finals and win a chip while he's suited up for him. He deserves it.
Well,
I think
his time, man.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. And I think that I don't know if this roster is going to do it, but I think this is a better roster than they've had in years past.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, I think
the only problem is like we said before, they're not the only team that I feel has gotten better.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, like we said, I mean, you could get a lot better and still end up with the same results, just because, I mean, there's other teams that are doing the same thing.
Yep.
That are going to be out. And, I mean, not only that, but there's other teams that are younger that are getting better. Yep. And also there's other teams that are probably better destinations. Yep. I mean, I'm not saying Portland is a garbage city or anything, but I'm just saying, I mean, I don't know how many people are saying, boy, my dream would be to go play in Portland. They're looking at the Lakers, the Celtics. They're not one of those top tier market cities.
No. Well,
And so, with that being said, I feel like there are teams with younger players that are better destination cities for people to want to go to than Portland. So they need to really take advantage of this. And they've made moves to try to get better. I know sometimes it hasn't worked out. Like they brought in Whiteside, which I thought was a great signing, but it didn't end up really working out for him. And then they let him go. But I hope, I think that they could do it. I really do think that they could do it. But injuries is going to be a big thing for sure. And then, I don't know. I mean, I don't expect anything different from Lillard or McCollum. I think both of them will keep doing what they've been doing.
mm-hmm.
And then I guess it's really just going to come down to how is the rest of the team going to play, and are they going to pull their own weight? Because player for player, I don't think they're the deepest team in the league, but I also think they're far from just being the starting five and then everybody else is kind of below average. They got plenty of players on the starting unit and on the bench.
Yep.
So they've got depth, but is it going to be enough? If I had to guess, my answer is no. But they're definitely not a team that you want to sleep on,
Nope.
and they're definitely not a team that has no chance. Like you said, I think they'll probably, when it's all said and done, I don't see them being an 8 seed that barely squeaks in like last year. I see them probably being 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Yep.
that's kind of what I'm thinking. But again, there's a lot of really good teams that gotta go somewhere.
Yep.
Like Phoenix and in the West. I mean, there's already a slew of teams that are super good. Somebody's gonna probably take the Thunder spot, but other than that, I mean, I only expect the Mavericks to get better and better.
No, exactly.
And there's just a lot of teams. The Warriors were a team that, nobody had to contend with last year, but this year they're going to be in the thick of things probably.
Yep. No, I agree.
So
they're going to be in the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, and then we'll see what happens with the Rockets. But again, I mean, if John Wall looks the way that he has so far and James Harden stays, or even if James Harden leaves, I mean, you don't think that they're going to have to give up the farm? Some team's going to have to give up the farm in order to get him. Yep. And if John Wall plays and Boogie Cousins play the way that they've played that I've watched in the preseason, they'll be just fine. Mm-hmm. Even without Harden, they might even be better in some respects. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like, John Wall and Cousins are probably going to be easier to play with for other players than Harden is.
Yep.
With Harden, it's like, okay, well, we're either going to run the offense or he's going to do everything and we just get rebounds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and again, with all the pieces someone would have to send in order, like, for instance, there was talk about Philly and James Harden possibly trading. I mean, Philly's going to have to send over a lot. And what I was hearing is that in order for that to happen, the Rockets are wanting Ben Simmons. Which, there's another guy that, I mean, if they end up getting Ben Simmons and first-round picks, which is what they were saying, let's not act like that won't be a difference maker, too. Ben Simmons is a great player in his own right.
Yep.
He may not be 45 a night like Harden, but let's not pretend like he won't make an impact. So, even if that happens, it's not like Houston's going to be out of it. No. So, there's just a lot of teams, and, I mean, we'll see what happens. All right, final thing. Who do you think, or how many teams do you think will make it out of this division, and who's going to be the best team out of those teams?
Teams that make the playoffs?
Yeah.
Probably 2. And I think Denver will end up winning the division. it'll be contested right down to the end though with the Blazers. Those two teams, I think.
Okay.
The rest of the teams in the division could be really solid. I mean, Utah is obviously a good team, but I just think talent-wise, Portland and Denver have the most, and will probably,
Denver will be the best. Yeah.
Possibly three teams actually with Utah. Possibly three teams make it out of there. But,
yeah. It's just we're at the point now where there's just so many good teams that, like he said earlier, you're going to have a really good team probably not make it.
Yeah. You're going to have several good teams not make it.
Yeah. So I'm going to say 3. Mm-hmm. I think Utah, Portland. Yeah, 3, Utah, Portland, and Denver. And I'm going to say Denver's going to be the best out of there. I think Denver could easily be a 2 seed. If not a 2, they'll be the 3, I think. Between them and the Clippers, we'll be fighting for the 2, I think. And then obviously I think Lakers will probably be 1. And then I think 4 will be the Mavericks, actually.
Warriors.
I think Mavericks will be 4. I think 5 will be Warriors, and then Jazz, Trailblazers, and Houston and Phoenix will all be fighting for 7 and 8. But again, listen to those teams. That's nothing too shabby there. You're in good company. It's not like, okay, well, we should be able to handle these. And the Suns are another team that's only getting better. So, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you watched it, but in the video where we talked about that conference, Bennett picked the Suns to be the 4 seed. He's that high on them. He thinks they're going to be that much better just with the addition of Chris Paul. He thinks that's going to elevate them that high where they're going to be the 4 seed. I personally don't see that, but he truly believes it.
Yeah.
So
that's
who knows?
Division right there.
Yeah. So
that Pacific is going to be one tough division.
Well, yeah, just the West in general. Again, and that's the other thing is, like, in my opinion, probably the worst team in this division, if you just go by the years, is probably Minnesota, and they have players all over. They've got great players, and then Oklahoma City probably will be, them in Minnesota will be the worst, but they're not too shabby. We talked about all the weapons on that team and the potential moving forward.
Yep.
So it's like, well, somebody has to be out, you know what I mean? Because you can't just take 5 teams from each division. That would be a pretty wild playoff if they did that, but the way it's currently constructed, that's not how it goes. So, I don't feel like there's any of these teams that are bad, but somebody's got to finish last.
Yep.
And unfortunately, getting better is just not going to cut it anymore. You got to get great.
Yep.
So, anyways, if you guys like the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, all that happy stuff. If you guys enjoyed this series, make sure you check out the other videos if you haven't yet. And also, share your thoughts. What do you guys think? Who's winning these divisions? Who's coming out? Who's doing things in the playoffs? Who isn't? Let us know what you think on that. And with that being said, Bryson,
I'm Steve.
See you guys in the next video.